Welcome everyone. You're listening to the account with the news report for day 340 on the war in Ukraine. Thank you for tuning in. Today, Ukraine commemorates the Remembrance Day of the Kruty heroes. More on that in a moment. It has generally been a slow day for news. Even the evening update by the General Staff was very short. Nothing really stood out, so I grouped all minor news into the usual situation inside Ukraine, with an update on today's shelling of Kherson by Russia, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, with another update on the Wagner PMC, and the international developments. And before we start the report, a look at today's special event. Today, Ukraine marks the Remembrance Day of the Kruty heroes. In 1917, Soviet Russia launched an attack on the Ukrainian People's Republic after the declaration of independence. The Battle of Kruty took place on January 29, 1918. 300 Ukrainian soldiers defended Kruty station against 4,000 Petrograd and Moscow Red Guards, buying precious time. During Soviet times, the graves of the soldiers were destroyed. After Ukraine regained its independence, the heroism of the Kruty heroes became a symbol of patriotism and sacrifice in the struggle for state independence. And now for a look at the flashpoints along the front. Kreminna. Throughout the day, Ukraine has repelled several attacks around the settlement. Russia seems to be intensifying its efforts to push Ukrainian forces back from Kreminna. Bakhmut. Videos were shared on social media showing Wagner mercenaries inside Blahodatne, suggesting the settlement has been captured by Russia. In its morning update, the General Staff of Ukraine reported repelled attacks at Blahodatne, effectively denying the claims. In the south of Bakhmut, Ukraine reported repelled attacks at Ivanivske and Lyschivka. Maryinka. Not much to report here, but a drone video was shared on social media showing the extent of destruction. Volodar. No changes here. Russia continues its head-on assaults on the settlement, with Ukraine repelling the attacks. Russia is suffering numerous losses. Melitopol. Ukrainian forces destroyed a railway bridge between Melitopol and Tokmak using HIMARS. Due to the damage, the Russian supply line will be temporarily out of service. Berislav. Videos were shared on social media showing Russia shelling the settlement using incendiary ammunition. And to start the news segment, the latest updates out of Ukraine. This afternoon, Russian forces started to massively shell the city of Kherson. The attack damaged the Kherson Regional Clinical Hospital, a school, a bus station, a post office, a bank, and residential houses. 3 civilians were killed and 5 injured. President Volodymyr Zelensky has held another meeting of the staff of Supreme Commander-in-Chief. The topics discussed were the frontline situation in the east and south, provision of key needs for the Ukrainian defense forces, the production, supply, and repair of weapons, military equipment, and ammunition, and possible improvement to the training of personnel. In his evening address, President Zelensky stated that Russia is trying to prolong the war and exhaust Ukraine. Therefore, Ukraine needs to speed things up, especially the supply of weapons. Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Kubrakov, head of Ukraine's infrastructure projects, after a meeting with US inspectors, proposed creating an aid audit mechanism to ensure transparency in the use of partners' aid. The hero of Ukraine, Dmytro Pavlychko, has died today. President Zelensky wrote on Telegram, Dmytro Pavlychko, a Ukrainian poet, public and political figure, hero of Ukraine, has passed away. He will be remembered as one of the authors of the Declaration of State Sovereignty of Ukraine and a founder of the Ukrainian national movement. And, of course, as a famous poet. May his memory live forever. Next up, the situation inside the occupied territories. The Luhansk Regional Military Administration head Serhiy Haidai reported that Russia is only advancing in Kursk Oblast due to the number of soldiers. According to him, there currently are too many of them, but they have no clear tactic or strategy. Russia is simply throwing bodies at Ukrainian positions to advance. He further stated that Russia has begun to forcibly relocate residents from frontline settlements without providing them with other accommodations. Haidai claims that this is done because Russian soldiers fear a possible cooperation between the local residents and Ukrainian military. Serhiy Haidai further stated that Russian mobilized soldiers are expected to arrive in Luhansk Oblast in February. According to him, the situation at the front is stable. Ukrainian forces at Bilohorivka are holding the defense, while in the Svatove-Kremina direction, Ukrainian forces are advancing slowly. The front line is littered with corpses of Russian soldiers, mostly Wagner mercenaries. Russian career officers are currently in Kremna waiting for the newly mobilized soldiers. Moving on to the latest news from Russia and Belarus. The governor of Kursk Oblast, Russia, Roman Starovoyt, accused Ukraine of shelling the border regions of Kursk Oblast with mortar fire, causing damage to power lines and blackouts. According to Andriy Yusov, a spokesman for the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine's defense ministry, Yevgeny Prigozhin does not make leadership decisions for the Wagner PMC, as many believe. His function is media-related and political, and his task is to secure funding. Investigations earlier suggested that Dmytro is responsible for leading operations, and the group is actually named after his call sign, Wagner. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. German arms maker Rheinmetall is ready to increase its production of tanks and artillery ammunitions, as well as begin manufacturing the US-designed HIMARS multiple rocket launchers, the company's CEO stated. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz intends to continue trying to talk to Russian President Vladimir Putin and work towards an end to the war against Ukraine using diplomacy. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and former ambassador to Germany, Putin and Melnyk, suggested that Germany could share submarines and the decommissioned frigate Lübeck with Ukraine. The advanced tanks received by Ukraine will not help make a breakthrough on the battlefield without additional efforts of Ukraine's allies, including the United States. Ukraine will need not only modern weapons, but also an ad hoc training program to teach Ukraine's military to use all the new equipment together. A contingent of military officials is quietly pushing the Pentagon to approve sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine to help the country defend itself from Russian missile and drone attacks. The British Ministry of Defense has published a photo that apparently shows Ukrainian military personnel who have flown in to learn how to operate Challenger 2 tanks. The worries in some Western countries that time in Russia's war against Ukraine might be on Moscow's side are behind the recent decisions to step up military hardware aid, the Wall Street Journal reports. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting as usual with the UK Ministry of Defense. In recent weeks, the Russian Ministry of Education has provided more detail on the rollout of the previously announced plan to include basic military training in Russia's secondary school curriculum. The module within the Basic of Life Safety course will include training with AK series assault rifles and hand grenades, military drill and salutes, and the use of personal protective equipment. The lessons will become mandatory from September 1, 2023. In addition, in December 2022, the Ministry of Science and Higher Education announced the Military Training Basics program for university students. The initiatives highlight the increasingly militarized atmosphere in wartime Russia, as well as being a, likely deliberate, evocation of the Soviet Union. Similar training was mandatory in schools up to 1993. Moving on to the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. The researchers reported that conventional Russian forces are likely replacing exhausted Wagner Group forces to maintain the offensive in Bakhmut. The Russian Ministry of Defense has increasingly reported that Russian VDV have been operating in the Bakhmut area since early January 2023, indicating conventional Russian forces are augmenting, if not replacing, Wagner forces in the area. The analysts believe that in light of deploying additional forces in the area, Russia's offensive potential in the vicinity of Bakhmut has not been completely used up. Combat footage posted on January 20th indicates that the VDV are indeed operating around Bakhmut, as the footage shows a Russian BMD-4M, a niche mechanized equipment exclusively used by the VDV. According to the Institute, the Russian military's decreasing reliance on Wagner forces around Bakhmut is likely reducing the influence of Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner PMC. Additionally, the researchers believe that Russia is facing a growing artillery ammunition shortage that could prevent them from repeating the tactics used during the capture of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. Regarding the current offensive around Vuhledar, the institute noted that the operation will likely culminate even if they succeed in capturing the settlement. A Ukrainian loss of Vuhledar, should it even occur, would also not likely lead to possible Russian breakthroughs on multiple points of the front in the theater of war. Therefore, Russia is unlikely to achieve any decisive operational success in the near future, although the possibility to make tactically and possibly even operationally significant gains remains. Ukraine, on the other hand, will likely find itself in a good position for a successful counteroffensive following any culmination of Russian offensives before or during the spring rainy season. Unless, of course, the Ukrainians do not strike first or manage to majorly disrupt any Russian offensive with a counteroffensive of their own. And to wrap up today's report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy continues to conduct offensive operations in the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Novopavlychko directions. In other directions, the enemy is defending previously occupied borders. According to available information, the Russian occupiers took all the medical equipment from the local hospitals of Kakhovka and Novaya Kakhovka to Novotroitsky, Kherson region. The occupation authorities are closing medical facilities in the mentioned cities, contrary to earlier promises. The personnel were faced with the fact: transfer or dismissal. And that concludes today's report. If you're interested in any of the articles, you can find links to them in the description as usual. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You are listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.